Okay, so uh, you sent over a whole bunch of stuff about TikTok and its future here in the US.
Yeah.
Articles, videos, even what looks like a transcript from a congressional hearing.
Mhm.
It's crazy how this one app has become like this big political thing and a moneymaker and like a total cultural force all at the same time.
Right?
So, are you ready to deep dive into all this and figure out if TikTok will like dance its way out of this possible ban or if it's curtains for them digitally?
It's really interesting how this isn't just like a typical tech story.
Yeah.
This is like a global power struggle happening right on our phones.
Totally. And this whole thing has been going on for years now,
Yeah.
ever since Trump first tried to force that sale back in 2020, remember? But
Right.
to understand why anyone would want to ban TikTok,
Right.
we really need to see how massive it's become here.
I mean, it's truly mind-boggling.
Yeah.
170 million Americans use TikTok.
Wow.
That's like half the entire country.
That's insane.
And they're not just like checking it for a second.
No.
The average user spends 80 minutes a day on TikTok.
80 minutes.
80 minutes.
Whoa, that's more time than a lot of people spend eating dinner.
Yeah.
No wonder all my friends are always glued to their screens. But it's not just about how many people are on it, right?
Right.
It's how TikTok has become like this cultural thing,
Absolutely.
especially for younger people.
2 out of 3 American teenagers are on TikTok.
Oh, seriously?
And what's really interesting? Research is showing that this is actually connected to fewer teens using Facebook.
Oh, wow.
It's like TikTok has this thing that Facebook just can't copy.
Yeah, it's kind of like how we all used to watch MTV for music videos back in the day.
Right.
But now that's all on YouTube and TikTok. It's like things are changing so fast.
Definitely.
And let's not forget, TikTok isn't just about teenagers dancing and lip syncing.
Right.
It's a huge part of the economy, too.
It really is. It supports more than 7 million businesses here in the U.S.,
Wow.
and it adds a crazy $24 billion to the GDP.
$24 billion.
Yeah, that's more than the GDP of a lot of countries. And it's created nearly 250,000 jobs.
That's wild. It's like a whole economic engine of its own.
It is.
And one researcher you sent us, Abby Richards, I think her name was.
Yeah.
She said it really well. She said, we're not just talking about a dancing app. We're talking about a platform shaping an entire generation's perception of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of power obviously makes some people nervous,
Of course.
especially when you think about TikTok being owned by a Chinese company.
Yeah, at the heart of all this are 2 big worries.
Okay.
National security and data privacy.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. government is afraid that TikTok's data, especially data about young people,
Yeah.
could be accessed by the Chinese government
Right.
and potentially used for spying or even influencing what people think.
So it's not just about what dances are trending.
No.
It's about that data being used in ways we might not even know about.
Exactly.
This actually reminds me of that congressional hearing you sent the transcript for. The one where they grilled TikTok's CEO, Shouzi Chu,
Mm-hmm.
about the company's ties to the Chinese government. It felt like they were accusing him of being like a puppet.
That hearing was pretty intense.
Mm.
The questioning got really heated.
Yeah.
They even brought up some really sensitive topics like the Tiananmen Square massacre.
Wow.
And this concern isn't just in Congress.
No.
It's gone all the way to the Supreme Court.
Oh, you're talking about that hearing where Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar
Yeah.
argued that TikTok basically gives China this powerful tool for spying on Americans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Prelogar's argument was that all the data TikTok collects
Right.
could be used to, like, build profiles on people,
Mm-hmm.
track their movements, and even figure out who might be vulnerable to recruitment or influence.
That's scary.
And to make it even more worrying,
Yeah.
Justice Brett Kavanaugh brought up the possibility of China using this data to build relationships with American teenagers who might one day be in positions of power.
Like, imagine that.
It's a chilling thought. But we have to remember that China hasn't just been sitting back and watching all this happen.
No, yeah. What have they been doing?
They've been making some very strategic moves
Like what?
to protect their interests and keep control of TikTok.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting.
Right.
Back in 2020, they changed their export laws to control TikTok's algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the secret sauce that makes the app so addictive.
That was a smart move.
Yeah.
It made forcing a sale of TikTok way harder.
Why is that?
Because without that algorithm,
Yeah.
it's just another video app.
It's like owning a bakery but not being able to share the recipe for your famous sourdough bread.
Exactly.
And speaking of power moves,
Uh-huh.
there are rumors now that China might be thinking about selling to Elon Musk.
That's a pretty interesting twist, isn't it?
It is.
Musk has strong connections to both China and the U.S.
Right.
Tesla has a huge factory in Shanghai, and he seems to have a good relationship with Chinese officials.
Yeah. And let's not forget his history with Trump, who's back in the White House now.
Yeah.
And get this, Trump, the guy who once threatened to ban TikTok, is now praising it and promising to save it. What a change.
It's hard to wrap your head
It
around.
really is.
Right.
He's gone from wanting to ban it to being TikTok's biggest fan, practically.
Yeah, he even met with TikTok CEO at Mar-a-Lago.
I know. And you said he's been asking the Supreme Court to hold off on the ban,
Yeah.
arguing that his deal-making skills can find a solution that protects national security without killing the app.
That's right. It seems like he's trying to find some kind of compromise.
Like what?
Maybe requiring TikTok to be more open about how it uses data, or limiting data sharing with its parent company in China.
Okay, so those are some possibilities, but the big question is, can a nationwide ban even happen at this point?
Right.
This isn't some random app we're talking about. It's a huge part of American culture and the economy.
It would be totally unprecedented to ban an app this popular.
So could it even happen?
Well, as you said, the real power is with Apple and Google.
Right.
They control the app stores,
Yeah.
and a ban would need them to remove TikTok, which would be a major blow.
Those are two companies you don't want to mess with.
Definitely. They could face billions in fines if they don't go along with the ban.
So are we all going to be like sneaking onto TikTok through VPNs and weird websites if it gets banned?
Well, some people might try workarounds like VPNs.
Yeah.
Or downloading it right from TikTok's website. But let's be real, those aren't practical solutions for most people.
True.
Plus, TikTok is made for phones.
Right.
Imagine trying to scroll through endless videos on your computer.
Yeah. Not exactly the same.
None at all.
And we've seen those other apps popping up.
Yeah.
Red Note. But they just don't seem to have the same appeal.
No, they don't.
It's like those TikTok refugees are wandering around trying to find a new home online.
It really is. It's fascinating to see how all this plays out. This whole story really shows the tension between all the incredible innovation in tech, the very real worries about national security,
Right.
and the delicate balance of power between countries.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
And I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But before we go any deeper, I think it's important to step back and ask,
Okay.
what does all this mean for you, the listener?
That's a good question.
How might your digital life be affected by this whole TikTok tug of war?
Yeah.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Yeah, it really is a big question to think about,
It is.
especially because what happens with TikTok could have these ripple effects.
Ripple effects.
Yeah, that go way beyond just this one app.
Okay, now you've got me curious. What kind of ripple effects are we talking about?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
Could this set the standard for how the U.S. deals with other foreign tech companies in the future?
So this isn't just about TikTok.
No.
It's about the future of all these tech companies.
Uh-uh.
So what kind of consequences could we see for other companies?
Well, for starters,
Mm-hmm.
we could see more pressure on other Chinese tech companies
Okay.
that are doing business here in the U.S.
Right.
They might face more investigations,
Mm-hmm.
tougher rules, even bans.
Whoa, that's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
It could create a ton of uncertainty
Yeah.
for businesses,
Mm-hmm.
investors, and even everyday people who use these services.
And it's not just Chinese companies, right?
Right. This could impact any foreign company
Wow.
that the U.S. government sees as a national security risk.
So we could be talking about like a total shift in how global tech companies work in the U.S.
It's possible.
Okay, so that's the foreign companies, but what about American companies?
Yeah.
Could this actually be good for them in some ways?
There's a chance of that.
How so?
Some U.S. companies might see this as their chance to grab market share
Yeah.
from their foreign competitors.
Like if TikTok goes away?
Yeah, users might switch to American options,
Right.
like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts.
But wouldn't that be bad for innovation in the long run?
It could be.
Like if companies know they could get banned just because they're foreign owned,
Yeah,
wouldn't that make them less likely to even try in the U.S. market?
that's a valid point. It's a tricky balance
It is.
between keeping things secure and having a market that's competitive and encourages new ideas.
And we can't forget about the whole free speech debate.
Right.
People against the ban say that it sets a bad example
Yeah,
for the government controlling what we can and can't see online.
that's a crucial point.
Yeah.
This isn't just about data anymore.
No.
It's about basic questions of freedom of expression and what the government's role should be in this digital age.
It feels like we're getting into some really complicated stuff here.
We are.
So how do we even start to make sense of all this?
I think the first thing is realizing that this whole situation
Uh-huh.
is like a mini version of the bigger challenges we're facing.
Okay.
In a world where technology is changing faster than we can keep up with.
So it's not just about TikTok.
It's about figuring out how to handle this digital world
Right.
where national security, economic stuff, and individual freedoms are all mixed together. Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture stuff,
Yeah.
but let's bring it back to you, the listener.
Okay.
How might your digital life be affected by all this?
It's a good question to ask.
What are some scenarios we should be ready for?
Well, let's start with the most extreme one.
Okay.
A total ban on TikTok in the U.S.
So, like, one day Americans wake up and TikTok's just gone.
That's right.
Like, oof, no more scrolling through dances or viral trends.
Exactly.
For some people, that might not be a big deal.
True.
But for others,
Right? Yeah.
especially those who use TikTok for entertainment connection or even to make money, it could be a huge problem.
Absolutely.
Imagine being a content creator
Right.
who built their whole career on TikTok
Yeah,
and then it vanishes. That would be awful.
it would be. And it's not just the creators.
Right.
Think about all the small businesses that use TikTok for marketing and reaching their customers.
A ban could really hurt the economy.
It could. Not just TikTok itself,
No.
but the whole system that's grown around it,
Okay, so that's the worst case scenario. What about something less extreme?
like a partial ban.
Yeah, or a compromise deal.
Right.
What would that look like?
Well, TikTok could have to put in place much stronger data security, limit sharing data with its Chinese parent company,
Yeah.
or allow the U.S. to check up on them regularly.
So it's like they'd be constantly watched
Yeah.
to make sure they're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
But would that even be enough for the people who think TikTok is a real threat?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Some critics say that as long as TikTok is owned by a Chinese company,
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be that risk of data going to the Chinese government.
So even with all those safeguards,
Yeah.
there might still be that distrust.
It's definitely possible.
Okay. And of course, there's always selling it to an American company,
Right.
which could maybe fix those worries.
So TikTok could end up being owned by an American company.
Mm-hmm.
But would that really solve everything?
It's a good question.
I mean, wouldn't it still be using the same algorithm?
Right.
The same technology that people are worried about?
It's true that changing who owns it
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily change the tech behind TikTok,
Right.
but it could give the U.S. government more control over how it's used
Okay.
and how data is handled.
It's like the U.S. would be saying, okay, you can keep the bakery, but we're going to be watching you closely to make sure you're following our recipe.
Exactly.
But even if TikTok is sold,
Right.
there's no promise that it'll stay the same.
That's true.
The new owner might change the algorithm,
Uh-huh.
the rules about content,
Mm-hmm.
or even the whole user experience. It's like the app could have an identity crisis.
Maybe. And we have to remember we're dealing with global politics
Right.
and technology that's always changing.
You're saying anything could happen.
Yeah. A new law could be passed, a new
Yeah.
tech could come out.
Mm-hmm. Or something totally unexpected could change everything.
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
So what does all this mean for us?
Yeah.
The users caught in the middle of all of this.
Right.
What should we be doing to prepare for whatever comes next?
I think the most important thing is to be informed
Okay.
and involved as citizens in this digital age.
What do you mean by that?
We need to be aware of the apps we use,
Yeah,
the data we share,
right.
and the possible risks.
So it's about being smart online
Exactly.
and understanding that our choices have real consequences.
And we also need to stay informed about this whole debate
Mm-hmm.
about TikTok and these other tech companies.
How do we do that?
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one,
Right.
and talk about these issues with each other.
Because at the end of the day, the future of the internet and how it's controlled
Yeah,
is something we all have a say in.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we're figuring all this out, it's important to remember that our digital lives are connected to global politics, economic forces,
Right.
and these fundamental questions about freedom and security.
It's a lot to take in,
It is.
but at least it's never boring.
Definitely not.
Maybe this whole TikTok thing will inspire us to be more informed and active in shaping the digital future.
That's a great point.
That's a great takeaway. But before we go too far into shaping the future,
Yeah.
I think there's another big part of this story we need to talk about.
What's that?
The cultural impact.
Yeah.
No matter what happens with this ban, TikTok has already changed American society.
It really has.
I mean, it's true. TikTok's become like this cultural phenomenon, a place for creativity, self-expression, even social change.
Absolutely. Think about all those viral dances
Yeah,
and memes and challenges that took over the internet.
right.
TikTok has this crazy ability to capture what's going on
Yeah.
and spread it so fast.
Like, remember that renegade dance? I swear everyone was doing it, from little kids to like my grandma.
Exactly. And it's not just silly trends either.
No.
TikTok's become a powerful tool for activism too,
Yeah.
raising awareness about important issues, getting young people involved in causes they care about.
It's like a megaphone for a whole new generation,
It is.
giving them a way to be heard.
Hmm.
But what I find really interesting is how TikTok has changed.
Yeah.
Not just what we watch,
Right.
but how we make and consume content.
It's a great point.
Like the whole short video thing, the quick cuts and the kitschy music.
Mhm.
It's changed how we interact with media.
It really has.
It's like our attention spans have gotten shorter,
Maybe?
but we're way more creative.
I think so.
And I think we need to dig into that more.
Yeah,
What does this shift mean in the long run?
that's a great question.
Will it make us understand the world in like a less deep way?
It's possible.
Or could it actually help people create and share their own stories in new ways?
It could.
It's like we're at a fork in the road, and we got to be careful which way we go.
We do.
But no matter what happens next,
Right.
one thing's for sure, TikTok has changed American culture forever.
I agree.
Yeah.
Even if TikTok disappears from the U.S. tomorrow,
Yeah.
its influence will stick around.
It's like how those 90s fashion trends keep coming back.
Right.
TikTok's legacy will be here even if the app isn't.
It's kind of crazy how this one app
Yeah.
that started out so simple
I know.
has become a part of so many things in our culture.
It really makes you think, what's the next big thing going to be?
Right.
What new tech will come along and change the world in ways we can't even imagine?
Well, that's the great thing about innovation.
What is it?
It keeps pushing the limits and making us rethink what we thought we knew.
And it's up to us to stay informed,
Definitely.
be involved,
Uh-huh.
and be able to adapt as we navigate this digital world that's always changing.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, I think we've officially deep dived as much as we can for today. This whole TikTok thing has more twists and turns than a viral dance.
Definitely.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thing to think about.
Okay.
This whole situation with TikTok really shows how much power these tech companies have and how much they influence our lives, our culture, even how we understand the world.
It's true. They're not just providing services anymore.
Right.
They're shaping our reality.
So the question we have to ask ourselves is,
Yeah.
what role do we want these companies to play in our future?
As individuals.
Yeah.
As a society.
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and it's one we have to answer together
Yeah.
if we want a digital future that works for everyone.
Well said.
Thanks.
Okay, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us on this crazy journey
Yeah, thanks for having me.
through the world of TikTok politics and the future of the internet.
It's been fun.
We hope you learned something new, saw things from a different angle, and maybe even laughed a little along the way.
I know I did.
Until next time.